Erin Patten is a metaphysical master in a millennial age. Wonderful, wonderful conversation about how metaphysics are used in her day-to-day life with her family, with her partner, with in the corporate world. I discovered that I'm more metaphysical than I thought. Of course, meta meaning going up and beyond. Physics is the physical world, and the difference between metaphysics and spirituality is a. She's a very, very impressive, very smart woman with a wonderful story, from Houston's Third Ward all the way up to Harvard. Just an uplifting, incredible woman with a great story. Enjoy the conversation. Metaphysics. How do you use it? How can it better your life? Take time to do things, to smell the roses a bit. It's a great conversation. Erin Patten, check her out. It's a great conversation. Thanks for listening, everyone.
I'm Joey Pinz. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? As I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Have to figure out.
No, it
I'm
wasn't.
familiar with your background.
It's just not the usual. You know how you usually click, zoom, whenever it's something different, you always are like, oh no.
So nice to meet you. Are you in Houston?
I am. I'm based in Houston full time.
Houston in August, though, that's something.
Yeah, when you grow up here, you get used to it. But you know what? I moved back here a couple years ago. And when I first moved back, I was about to die. Like, I was like, how do people live here?
I've been there in July. I'm in the Northeast. You're familiar, of course, where you're at school, and I'm in New
Yes.
Haven. And yeah, the humidity there is we have humidity here, but not quite like Houston.
No,
It
not at
is
all.
something. Well, so nice to meet you, and I feel like I
You
feel like I know
too.
you so much already. So I'm going to coldly admit I had to look up metaphysics. I remember learning about it
That's good.
in
That's
college,
good.
but I forgot. So please tell me about your road to metaphysics.
I would love to. That is what I'm about. I consider myself to be a metaphysical master in a millennial age. So, my story will really sort of unlock what all of that means, because metaphysics, at its core, let's just break down the
Yes.
etymology of the word, because we all are, smart people here. We're intelligent beings. And meta is the prefix. And we all are familiar with meta, like metaverses, meta coins, metamorphoses. Meta just simply is the Greek word for to go above or beyond, to go be above or beyond. And then physics at its core just represents the physical world, the physical plane, the physical aspects of our being, the three-dimensional world. And so when you put meta and physics together, it really just invites us to go above or beyond the three-dimensional plane that we live in. So it really calls on us to access our divinity, to access our multidimensionalism of being the gods and goddesses that we are as human beings. And so it's really cool because people know that we have some special gift as human beings, yet really don't understand how to tap in to source, on a day-to-day basis, a minute-to-minute basis. It's not just something that we do on Sunday mornings,
Mm.
pretty much, or Fridays at Shabbat. It's a divine access that we have all the time. And that's really all that metaphysics is. And I've spent the past, I would say, 4 to 5 years really on a journey, a metaphysical journey, to find what it is that I understand, live, and embody. What I also like to say, I understand, not just understand. I don't just overstand, but I understand all that there is about the metaphysical path, which is why I call myself a master. Like, I have a master's in business, a master's in public policy, I have a master's in metaphysics. And I live it, and I live it, and I breathe it. And the reason why I say I'm a metaphysical master in millennial age is because of my life journey. And my life journey, it started here in Houston. I'm originally from Houston. I grew up in Third Ward, which is a historically Black neighborhood, actually where George Floyd is from. And it's I wouldn't call it necessarily a have and a have-nots place, but it certainly it runs the scope in terms of class, of wealth, of education in one small neighborhood. And so, Beyonce is also from Third Ward. Felicia Allen, Rashad Allen, from the Cosby Show, they're all from Third Ward as well. So Third Ward is the home of so many notables, kind of like a Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and so it really has a creative class, if you will, of Black folks. And that's how I grew up. And my parents were both doctors. My dad was a surgeon. My mom was a dentist. And they had grown up in Third Ward too. Yeah, so we had a legacy, a generational legacy of I would say of rags to somewhat
Mm.
riches, if you will, for Black folks, and that was really my story as well. I really embodied that, and at a young age, my parents had worked so hard, had accomplished so much, and they had me at a later time. My dad really was his own being too, and got caught up with some stuff at his office, some prescription fraud situations that landed him in federal prison. And that happened at 6 years old. And a couple months before that, my sister, who, was going to college here in Houston, was openly gay, was living with her girlfriend, and they got into an altercation and she got stabbed to death. And so she was murdered. So here I am, this Cosby-like child. I'm in beauty pageants. I'm taking ice skating lessons and gymnastics lessons, and my parents are really trying to paint this picture. Now I have a dad in jail and a sibling that's murdered. And what do you think that looks like for a child growing up in the '90s? A Black child? Oh, your dad's a drug dealer, and your siblings are involved in gangs. So here I am with this. Almost like muted protection so that my peers around me, like where I went to school, I'm the only Black kid. I'm in these gifted and talented programs. I'm in all these extracurricular things where kids are, above and beyond. And at that time, for some reason in our society, kids that came from the inner city wore like the scarlet letter. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Like you were just, oh, poor kid from the inner city, dad in jail, da, da, da. And I didn't want that to be my narrative. So I didn't even talk about it. My mom told me to lie about where my dad was. And pretty much since that day, we haven't even mentioned my sister's name. And actually her birthday was this past Sunday. So it was, in my mind, like the beginning of me learning how to pretend, how to wear masks, how to exist in this matrix for protection, and not understanding that, it is through our experiences that give us access to our divinity, that give us access to our greatness. But because first we fear the judgment of others, which is really the judgment of ourselves against ourselves, that we don't even share who we are with other people. And so that's where I learned that behavior. And so you can imagine a lifetime of trauma, compounded. I had other experiences in my adulthood. Of course, through it all, I'm going to shine because I want to make sure I please everyone around me. So I'm getting nice accolades. I'm living in New York City. I'm going to Harvard for business school and policy school. I'm doing all the things you would expect a young girl with two doctors as parents and, good education to do, not understanding the trauma that I endured from a very young age through my life, in hiding who I really was and what I really experienced in terms of grieving of a mother who's in a mental institution, of a brother who's off in the Navy, of a father who has to come back and integrate in society and is dealing with his own, identity, so we don't get into the complexities of that as we don't do that, you know, until we get to an age where we're like, I'm about to go crazy and I've never talked to anybody about anything that's bothered me in my life. Maybe that's a start. And so when that started for me, it was after I graduated from Harvard because I had done all these things, gotten all these accolades, traveled all over the world, and it landed in Detroit after Harvard on a fellowship to work at the Kresge Foundation, which was founded by the Kmart family. So it was an incredible opportunity in a growing city. And I didn't know anybody there. I had no family there. I had very few friends. And then on top of that, I partnered with a guy who was incredibly toxic, but as everything, there's a gift and a curse to every relationship as soon as I got there. So it forced me to turn to God. I had nowhere else to go. Nowhere else to go. So I was just like, praying, fasting, learning how to eat better, and it started very simply with that going to church because I wasn't going to church. I grew up Catholic. We went to church, but there was really no relationship with God because it went through your priest, which is
Hmm.
what it is. But it's just, I really started to develop a relationship with God, a relationship with self that I had never experienced before because of the isolation, the toxicity, the loss of sense of identity. I had no idea who I was at that point. I had done all these things. Who the fuck is
Right.
Erin? Like I went to Harvard, all these things, but who am I in this? And so that was when the journey started. And it really just came with questioning, with digging deeply into myself, with eventually losing my father. My father passed away of illness, several illnesses, heart illness, kidney illness, a lot of things that really plague Black communities, which we learn in metaphysics has to do with emotion. The kidneys, the liver are all organs tied to our emotion, our inability to release trauma. And he passed away, and then very soon after that, my mom went into a hospital because she was close to committing suicide. So that's what brought me back to Houston from Detroit after I had launched a business. I was doing that. I was, on my way to, success. And little did I know that spiritual path that I was walking wasn't for the business. It was to prepare me to what was happening in my family and in my
Hmm.
personal life. And so that put a hard stop on my business and all that I was doing. And so that was in 2018. And so by 2019, I was back in Houston. I was pregnant with my son.
Harlou?
And
Hello.
Harlow, Harlow. And that's when I started to really claim the metaphysical psychology and the work that I do in metaphysics.
Very interesting. Do you think as a child living in Houston's, in the third ward and what's happened to your father and your family, what's all around you, do you think perhaps you were introduced into metaphysics earlier and didn't realize it?
Yes. Oh, I definitely realized it. And I actually mentioned it today to a family friend. So, interestingly enough, these times in prisons, can be opportunities for some, souls, as we saw with people like Malcolm X and, Nelson Mandela. I wouldn't say my father took it to that height, but he certainly came through it a transformed individual.
Hmm.
And as he was there, he became a poet and he write loads
Wow.
of poems. I actually have a book of poems. To me, he would write me poems all the time. He would write me prayers. And when he came, and he would send me books. So when he came back, actually at 12 years old is when he returned. I was between 12 and 13. He would talk to me about some of the stuff that he learned while he was away and gave me books. I remember one of them specifically is called Pawns in the Game, and it's about the New World Order, which of course is much more on the conspiracy side. However, it's a lot tied to this idea of something greater than the structure that we know of and live and breathe today. And so, yes, I was absolutely introduced to chaos theory, to New World Order, to lots of these things as a middle schooler. Had no idea what it meant, but it struck a chord with me. So by the time I was reintroduced to a lot of these concepts, right before my father was passing away, he and I bonded on some of these things right before he transitioned, and so it was almost like a remembering, and that's all this path is a remembering. And because of metaphysics, I have to break down the word even of remember, because the word member, can relate to like the male
Hmm.
penis or members of the body. So when you think about members, it's really tied to parts of the body. And then to is always like to repeat, to put
Hmm.
it together. So when you remember, you're putting together parts of your body, parts of your being. And so, in many ways, that's what was happening to me after my father passed away. I was remembering who I truly was.
Very interesting. And with what you know
Mhm.
now about metaphysics, how would that have helped through some of that trauma when you were a youth?
Ooh. Ooh, that's what I vision for my
Mm,
son and for children
yes.
today. Because what that requires is just an overflowing of love energy and a removal of fear. And that is the
Hmm.
difference between metaphysics and the path that I led. Is I led the path of fear. My mom feared the government. She feared police. She feared, the shame of, having her husband away and having to raise a child as a single mother. It was a mindset of fear and protection and fight or flight. Whereas as a metaphysician, you understand the abundance of the universe. You understand the goodness of God and of source. You understand the goodness of the people around you. Even if they don't appear to be good, it will turn around. And so that is the difference in this approach today versus what I experienced as a child, because you take those what we consider uh, bad situations, and you transmute them like the alchemist. You transmute that which is base metal into that which is gold. You transmute that which is shitty into that which is fertilizer and flowering and blooming and gardens and feeds
Hmm.
generations.
Interesting. So
Hmm.
forgive me of some of these questions, but it's just
I love it. Come
it
on with
seems
it.
so abstract. So what are some concrete notions that some of the youth can use in metaphysics to help them?
Yeah. I would say the concrete things are the things that sound weirdest, but like simply
Mhm.
meditation, getting out in nature. Kids today versus what we would do likely is play outside, climb
Mm,
trees, pick flowers, get grounded in the earth, take off your shoes, run bare feet. That's something that I
mm,
do now that I find gives me, like, I literally earlier this week was lying in a blanket looking up at the trees. When's the last time any of us have
right.
done that? Not since we were children. And so those are healing experiences to become one with nature, because you start to look at the trees and you start to see shapes and you start to see you in that which is around you. And those are healing things that children can do, besides what we, and especially what I was programmed to do, was like play
Mm,
sports or dance or compete or to win. Like, there was always the outlet of energy was always for a
mm.
gain. It was never for fulfillment. And so these are the differences between what children can do now. Of course, I understand the sports, all these things. We have to be realistic, but understand the little things that we can provide for children in terms of being still. You got in trouble, how about let's spend 15 minutes sitting outside in the grass. And if the bugs eat you up, let them eat you. You probably needed those bites anyway. So, I mean, those are things concretely that we don't see as metaphysical, but it's exactly what it is, because everything is living around us. We just choose to engage it or not.
Very interesting. Since I learned
Mhm.
about you, I've been thinking, wanting to talk to you, and something happened recently, which I'm sure happens to everybody. Where I was in an airport, and I just kind of glanced over, and I noticed somebody was looking at me, and they weren't staring. It wasn't, they weren't oogling. They were just, and the weight of the stare kind of pulled me there. And the opposite has happened, where I'm just kind of glancing at somebody and they turn and look at me. And so I'm thinking to myself, is
Yeah.
this can't be explained in science. Is this metaphysical?
Yes, it's telepathy.
Interesting.
Telepathy, or I mean, and it could be any of our higher senses, but we communicate with our thoughts. And this is what I teach in my metaphysical accelerator, is the power of our thoughts, and our thoughts as frequency waves, because that's been measured. It's been proven that our thoughts are waves,
Hmm.
just like microwaves, sound waves that we listen to in music. Our thoughts carry that same energy, and that they, like the waves we see on our screen today.
Yeah.
Like, those can be measured. Our thoughts can be measured in the same type of way. And so sometimes when you're looking at someone, you may unconsciously be sending them a signal, and they turn around and catch your signal, and you're like, hey
Wow.
dude, like, and didn't even realize it. But sometimes, our subconscious is probably 80% more active than our conscious mind. And so sometimes we don't know what connection we could have had with that soul or that person in another life, in another time in our lives. And we just remember it in that moment.
Very interesting. What's the
Mhm.
difference between metaphysics and spirituality?
That's a great question because I use them interchangeably. I use them interchangeably for contextual sake. However, if we were to break them down, I would say spirituality has more connotations with rituals, with kind of like religion, and so spirituality is a little bit of a departure from the religion, but the metaphysics truly is a science. And spirituality doesn't necessarily have that scientific
Mm.
connotation because people accept it as is. Spirituality, in my view, is like a Buddhism practice, or Taoism, or sacred geometry. Whereas metaphysics really is, the science, the facts, the data, and it, for me, in my experience, in my articulation and application. And so that's really the difference between me. But I kind of move interchangeably between spirituality and
You do.
metaphysics.
I hear often people
Hmm.
describe themselves as spiritual, but not religious. Could they also be
Hmm.
inferring some metaphysics in that?
Absolutely.
But they just don't realize it.
Absolutely. They don't even realize it because people don't really use the term
Right.
often, and that's also what's cool about being a metaphysical master is I can introduce this new terminology such that it becomes an even more of a departure from the spirituality. If people don't want to say I'm spiritual, well, you know what? I understand that I'm a multidimensional
Mm.
being, so that's metaphysics.
And common
Mhm.
misconceptions on your webpage, was a great webpage. You say metaphysics is a bit of woo hoo, or is your term, or woo woo. I mean,
Yeah,
what are
yeah.
the common misconceptions? I had to go back and look it up because I didn't quite understand. And I talked to somebody today. I said, hey, you know what metaphysics is? He goes, I don't remember what it is. And I said, well, I'm going to talk to a
Yeah.
specialist today.
That's cool. So the woo woo with the spirituality, think like you're going to New Orleans and you meet like a voodoo
Mm.
priestess, or you're in the Caribbean or something and you see one of the chicken rituals like the hoodoo priestess, or you're traveling in Brazil and you see some of the vestiges of Yoruba and some of these spiritual practices. That is the woo woo.
I see.
And it can also be done with and I'm thinking of it from an African perspective because that's my experience. However, I do understand in some Indian traditions, like I've been to some Indian weddings, like how they have all the temples out and sometimes they do the chanting and the bells and things like that. That can be woo woo. Like if you're sitting in a corporate boardroom and I start flapping flowers and chanting with bells, that would be a little bit off putting. However, I could talk to you about your auric field and how it extends 5 miles from your heart center if you're activating it at your fullest
Wow.
potential. And I'm breaking it down in a way that's more, logical and scientific, yet it still connects back to what the bells and the candles and the incense are doing in the spiritual sense.
Fascinating.
Yeah, because I'm just explaining what the spirit is in scientific
And
terms.
that's where there's an overlap with spirituality. Now, how about, I mean, I realize karma is a term everybody throws around. It's usually proceeded after death, but I mean, you certainly carry some of that weight forward. Is that integrated into metaphysics as well?
So I don't talk about karma in metaphysics. I don't at all. Actually, it's part of more of the Hindi
Mm.
practice that I'm not as in tune with. And however, I am familiar with karma because I do. Sadhguru is one of my master teachers. I
Uh,
consider, and how he describes karma is it's something we carry in our soul always. Yet it's our response to our circumstances that determine our karma, not the circumstances themselves. And so often people look at karma as, I have my crystals here, like say the wind blows and the crystal hits me in my face. And I'm just that was your karma. No, my reaction to getting hit in the face, if I choose to be still, if I choose to curse it out, that's my karma. Because my reaction to it determines what will happen next, And so that's how we stay in our karma or we cycle out is our reaction to our circumstances.
Incredible. I have friends that have been to
Mhm.
India, and I remember reading about Mother Teresa, and she would try to help some of the downtrodden there, and of course their belief was that person deserved to be there because of karma, because of past life,
Yeah.
so they deserve to be there. Don't
Yep.
help them. Whereas Mother Teresa has
Yep.
different belief based system, and she would try it. So there was a collision, obviously, of ideals there. But it's fascinating to me
Yeah.
how others view it. Now,
Well, the thing is, because can I
Please.
respond to that? Well, the thing is, I love that conversation because I was thinking the same. My dad used to do
Mm.
that to me. I used to always hand money to homeless people and things like that, and he would have the same perspective. They were nasty, energetic people in a way. And the thing about it is how Jesus was and how Mother Teresa are. Their frequency, their energetic field, force field is so
Hmm.
strong that when they come in contact with lower energies, they are not deterred. However, if your energetic force field is not strong enough, you can become susceptible to those lower frequencies and they can bring
Wow.
you down and they can affect you. But that's why, when Jesus would talk about a healing, he would always tell people, don't tell
Hmm.
anybody. Don't share anybody what I've done with you, because just the mere negative frequency thought that someone gives to you can mess up your healing.
Wow.
That's the difference. Is that if you're not ascended master level, then yeah, you can't hang out in those energies. However, if you know how to protect your energy, people can be blessed by you. People can touch you and be healed depending on your level of frequency. So that's why it's really important. That's why I talk about it metaphysically. I explain the power of love. It's not just kissing your mate at night. The power of love is with the energy you give to people, because that increases your frequency and your ability to heal yourself and heal others and be a whole individual.
I mean, there are so many studies that show that when people are compassionate and they're shared with love, they just heal quicker. The
Hmm.
anti-placebo effect, where I know people have talked about, where
Yes,
they thought
just the power of the
they
mind.
had one drug, but they had all these symptoms, and when they were told they had the placebo, all of a sudden it just goes away. They
Yep.
convinced themselves that they were, in harm's way, or they were had these ill effects. And Erin, how is that measured? How is that energy measured from people?
I don't know the instruments. However, this is a very good question because I need to. So, there are, because of the way our bodies are set up, how you would measure sound frequencies from
Mm,
whales, the sonograms, like these machines, like even the lie detector tests, it's capturing our
mm.
thought frequencies. So these things can be measured in labs. Um, just as easily as, and the only reason why I don't believe this research has penetrated mainstream is because people don't necessarily see the
Mm.
value. They don't see the connection between when Oprah tells you to write down your gratitude every day. They don't understand that when you're being grateful, that increases your heart energy. And that's what I'm teaching, is by expressing the compassion, expressing the gratitude, you are increasing your energy. Though you can't just measure it with, maybe that can be part of my technology. I should develop tools to measure your love capacity, you know. But I mean, but these are things that are just happening in labs, university labs, happiness studies. I'm sure you see some of these happiness studies and stuff, but people are more concerned about cancer or corona or all these fear laden things to invest their attention, their energy, their studies, their drugs to. And they're not focused on the aspects of self and of the beings that is actually healing and can completely eradicate some of these industries, to be honest.
Unfortunately, we're in a time where, if it bleeds, it leads, and people
Yes.
want clickbait, and they want quick things, and they want somebody to hate and somebody to point the finger at. When I remember
Yes.
within the last couple of years, pre-pandemic, there was the happiest nation study, and I think it was like a Northern European country. I forget which one, and they measured happiness somehow. I should look into that, but United States
Yeah.
did not do well in that.
Yeah.
You say you did a lot of time in Europe. My father is Italian. I spent a lot of time there as a youth, and Southern Italy. Nobody works. I love them all. It's a wonderful place. The food is wonderful. People are friendly, but not a lot of production gets done. But people are happy,
Yeah.
and they're skinny, and they're
Yes.
walking around, and they're talking to each other, and they're
Yes.
holding hands, and
Yeah.
guys are embracing each other, and it's just very,
Yes.
very different. But I love it, but it doesn't happen here.
At all. And that's part of what I teach too in meta business. And I talked about that in one of my sessions with my clients, because I was saying to them, like, what they were like, oh, so why don't you think that businesses have
Mm,
adopted this? And I was like, well, what do you think, your boss would say if you told him that I can't work today because, I don't want to bring my bad energy to the space. Like, it's not just a sick day. I'm not doing well. My mother's sick. My child is driving me crazy. I can't show up today. You know, and so really part of the spiritual metaphysical teaching is that you do nothing and you
mm,
accomplish everything. Even in scripture, Jesus talks about how in the fields, the flowers, they're beautiful. The rose petals. If God dresses his fields like this, you don't think he'll dress you in the
mm.
finest clothes?
Wonderful.
So there's so many aspects of our spiritual walk that we are in misalignment with by working every day, by competing with each other, by, being overly masculine or overly feminine, or, trying to not be ourselves and connect with our source. And so that's why it's so beautiful in places like Southern Italy, while we vacation there and we want to
That's
cry when
right.
we have to leave, because this is how
That's
life
right.
should be.
Everything. Food, the water, the people, the wine, oh my goodness. So we kind of mentioned how metaphysics plays with children. How can it help adults? How you mentioned in the workplace would be difficult. You mentioned one scenario, but how else can adults adopt this and learn?
Yes. So very simple techniques. And one of them I love to call my early morning
Mm,
ritual. And it's for those that are willing to do a little work. Like metaphysics, this path requires discipline. And that is something too that as Americans, especially, we've not been encouraged to have in many ways. We want things fast. We want things now. We've been taught to please, be pleased, and so discipline is a requirement for this path. And so I definitely believe that just spending 15 minutes with self a day in the morning before you talk to anybody will change your life. Until you find that person that you can wake up to and it's just like all good, you know what I'm saying? Like, and everybody's great and happy. Getting up by yourself, and I did this for years, journaling, meditating, making a smoothie, going for a walk, like just taking time to yourself. And I still do this today. It really helps to, like I said, increase that energy, that love power, because the more you show love to yourself, the more you have from your cup to
mm.
give. And people always talk about fill your cup first, put on your air mask first before you put on the other person's air mask. But we don't actively practice this because most of us don't discipline ourselves enough to do it.
Glad you mentioned discipline. That's the theme of the podcast and everything. I feel
Okay.
everything kind of
Yes.
comes to that. So waking up in the morning,
Yes.
don't turn that cell phone on, darn it. Keep it away and laptop
Yes.
down, no noise, and just
Yes.
15 minutes of,
Yes.
of meditation.
Yes. Or whatever your meditation
Mm.
is. Whatever your meditation
Sit
is.
ups.
And so sit-ups, it can be active, it can be push-ups. Like my boyfriend Brandon, he loves to go to the gym. Like, I've been guided also to more active meditation because I have a very strong mind. A lot of us who are intellectuals have very strong minds, and that's why yoga exists. Because yoga is, at its core, you move the
Mm.
body to still the mind. Imagine, think about, I don't know if you've ever taken a yoga class, but most of the time your yoga class is 50 minutes, and then you lie in your meditative position at the end, shavasana, for 5 minutes. So you move your body for 50 minutes for 5 minutes of connection to God. Like,
Mm.
that's all you need. It's really, but the more you're able to move your body, release all those thoughts, those energies, and you can have a clear channel. You don't need that much time. It's like light. It is light. So it travels fast. Yeah, it's not like sitting at a lecture at school for an hour and a half. No, when you're talking to God, you get the beam, you get the information, and then you go.
Fascinating. So 15 minutes
Mhm.
alone with your thoughts, whatever it may be, if whether it's sit-ups, it's alone. How about for those who don't have a spiritual connection, an atheist? How do you kind of deal with that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there is still a knowing of your divinity. That has to be baseline for people to adopt this path, because to understand that your being comes from a source is pretty much universal law. I mean, literally, like, you can't have a cell phone, you can't have a light bulb, you can't have a refrigerator, you can't have anything without being connected to a source. And so how does anything have how are we animated without a source? Whether it's a god or a deity or angel or something, it can be argued. However, you can't argue, in my view, the law of having a source of being. As soon as that breath is taken, then where do you go? Back to source. And so that is really at for me, I would have a challenge talking to someone who didn't understand that. I would need to actually talk to that person to understand how to articulate that to
I know
them.
for some atheists, like the
'Cause
12-step program, they can't get by. I don't know what it is, 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, a higher being. And generally, I have some experience in it with friends, but they just, yeah, related, like you said, to an alternate source, to some kind of even
Mhm,
a parental love, or a friendship
mhm.
love or something like that.
I can see that
Yeah,
too.
that's still still a
Mhm.
source. So
A
15
source.
minutes in the beginning of the day, be with yourself, keep your thoughts together. Then right when that's over, the American public will get on their phone and start getting into the hustle and bustle, right? They'll start
Yes.
drinking a lot of coffee, and get on their cell phone and start replying to emails and check the Instagram. So what do they do next to stay metaphysically connected? You don't like that.
Do less of
Less.
that. Do less of that. Do less of it. Do less.
Yeah. Well,
Do
certainly
less.
that's the path
And
you would see, right?
that's the
Yeah.
path. And find ways to do less.
Mm.
Find ways to say
Discipline.
no. Find ways to set
Mm.
boundaries. Even if that means just cold turkey
Right.
cut off. If you got to give the cold shoulder, because sometimes we don't have the breath or the energy to engage. Sometimes it just deserves a cold shoulder. Whatever one must do to protect your energy. I know earlier on in my path, I learned this phrase: you guard your heart for the jewels of your
Mm.
soul. You guard your mind for the jewels of your soul.
Wow.
You guard your mind for the jewels of your soul. And so you have to be your own guardian, your own keeper of your peace. If you don't guard your peace, who's going to guard it?
It is very true.
And that's something too that I'm learning, that I've learned, is you start to guard your mind with your thoughts. You start by guarding your thoughts. So say you get that email, because I know a lot of this is
Mm.
unavoidance. You can't avoid it. You get that email, you gotta get this paycheck at the end of the week. How do I respond? Sometimes you can't give the cold shoulder. Let me give it an hour break. Let me give it a
Mm.
day break if you
Mm.
have to, so I can respond with clarity and not have a heart attack over email, because I've been there. And so that is where we need to go in this path, is understanding how to guard our mind, our emotions, our reactions. And sometimes, especially if it can warrant it, it has to get a cold turkey no.
Yeah, discipline. I've run a business since the '90s, and I would have these peer groups, and I noticed that when I travel and get away from the business, I work so much more on it. I'm able to do things. The laptop is shut. I'm walking, I'm playing golf, I'm in the airport, I'm talking, and I just ideas come and I start writing them down. But when you're stuck in the middle of it and this laptop is open, and like you say, you get that email and it deserves immediate action, and you're starting to bring things around, there has to be a point where you just shut the laptop, close the phone, and sit down with yourself, take a walk, even bring a notebook. I record things on my phone when I have ideas, but it's easier said than done.
Easier said. Everything about this path is easier said than done. Everything. Everything. And that's what makes it so fun. That's what makes the
Mm.
journey fun, is because you're like, that's all I needed to do.
Hmm.
And the thing is, we've been conditioned to control. We want to control everything, everyone around us. And what this path calls us to do is allow. let go and let God. Let go and let God. Is what one of my teachers, her name is Abraham Hicks. I love to listen to her. But one thing she always says is, why not allow the universes, the forces that create universes, work for you? We try to jump into action. We try to do everything fast, you know what I mean? Get it all done. And then why not allow the forces that create worlds
Hmm.
work for you? They're waiting. And that is what's required of the metaphysical path, is that belief in the greater forces. You know, everyone loves Star Wars. That is based on us. Those stories are based on us. We are the
Hmm.
superheroes. We are the Darth Vaders. We are the Luke Skywalkers. We carry the power. Our lightsabers are crystals. You know, like I just pulled it out. These are our
Hmm.
lightsabers. You know, so that's our story. Why not harness that energy? But that energy can only be harnessed in stillness, when you're golfing, when you're kiki and drinking wine and you're not paying attention. That's when the forces can move around you because you're not resisting them. You're not thinking so hard about what you want to see happen. And that's the attachment that we talk about a lot in the spiritual journey, is the law of detachment, the law of allowing, because we have so many desires. We want to be wealthy. We want to have our kids
Hmm.
in college. We want to be happily married. We want to impress our boss. We desire all these things and we work so hard at it, as opposed to just loving ourselves through it. Like, and I understand it so well because that was me. Like, I'm like the consummate, I'll say it again, I was the consummate people pleaser. I just wanted everyone around me to be happy at my expense. So then I'm not making anybody happy if I'm not happy. So that's what the focus has to be about. It's like then it becomes really easy to shut down my laptop when someone sends me a
Hmm.
nasty email. I'm like, ooh, not for my happiness, you know, and so then you realize that something magical ends up happening. Like, you know, that person can leave the company, or, you know, you end up getting switched to a different team. You know, it's always something that happens in that contrast when you learn how to release and let go of it.
Wow.
Mhm.
It seems to me you're practicing, you're teaching. You don't try so hard, just kind of let it happen.
Yes. Yes. The control is the key. You have to release control. And that's very hard for us because control comes from a place of fear. It comes from a place of lack. And so when you are afraid of losing something, you want to hold on to it. You want to hold on to your job. You know, you got it. You got to pay the bills. You got to, you know what I'm saying? So you want to hold on to your family. You want to hold on to all these things because it's your identity, your
Hmm.
created identity. When in reality, none of these things are you.
Hmm.
Even your children, which I had to learn the hard way. A whole different conversation. Maybe we have time. I know we have a long time, but even your children are not yours to control. And that was my experience, which is how I became this way. I was very much in a controlled environment. And they are their own beings. And we are just taught to control, and especially mothers, control everything in the household and our jobs with our children, how they grow up, how people talk, you know, how people eat, you know, and it's really a madness. It becomes a disease. And I've seen it happen.
It's fascinating when it comes to children. I'm officially empty nest in about 2 weeks. My youngest goes off to university, and
Okay.
my oldest is at Cal State, and my youngest is going to Maryland. And so I, yeah, so I will
Okay.
be, without children. And you bring that up, and put a little tear in my eyes. Like, yeah, you have to let go. You have to let go.
That's not who you were
Right.
created to be. You were just meant to teach them a little something on their path.
That's very interesting. How metaphysics plays
Mhm.
in parenthood.
Yes, it's powerful. It's almost contrary to how we've been taught or programmed by TV and movies, because we really haven't been taught how to parent, because our parents and our grandparents were very different than how we are.
Very.
And I wish they would have taught us. But we've been programmed by TV, by music, by movies, how to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know this is not politically correct these days, but I mean, I watched Bill Cosby. I watched, I watched Happy Days. I watched these kinds of things as a kid. I mean, my father, an Italian immigrant, got his first pair of like real shoes when he was 12 years old. He worked in a
Yeah.
farm. I mean, he did not relate to. We didn't really clash at all, but it's just very different now. My children are, have very different things than what I had. I'm not
Yeah.
saying one's worse or better. It's just different, and
It's
it's very
different.
different. You have to parent differently, and
Yeah.
as I see my youngest daughter go off to school like that, we just went on a little trip. And I said, Olivia, sometimes I'm playing golf, and I bring everything, and it's like 150 yards, and it's a bad lie, and I got a little wind, elevated green. All the science is telling me 8 iron, 8 iron, but my gut is telling me 7 iron. So I go with my
Okay.
gut and I use that. And I said, you're going to be in school and you're going to be around some friends, or what you think is friends. They might persuade you in a certain way. Just listen to what your gut says and make a decision there.
Ooh. Ooh. Let's talk about the
So you
gut.
made that analogy. Let's
The
talk
gut.
about it.
Yes. So the gut is our brain. The gut is our body's
Mm,
brain. And the gut, so and even in metaphysics, it has such a powerful resonance because it even at one point in my understanding, when we were more advanced beings, used to be like a frontal spine,
mm,
spinal cord. And on top of that, our intestines, they're like a mile long, something crazy. You know what I'm saying? So there's so many synapses, there's so many frequencies, there's so much happening in our gut. It connects to so many of our organs, and our organs are called organs because they are the music that keeps the church, the body, the temple running.
mm,
And so that's what's so beautiful about the organs. These are the true, the sounds of the church, of the temple, are our kidneys, our spleen, our stomach, our liver, our intestines. Our gut speaks to us because that's our emotions. And that's actually what I'm learning now. I'm studying with this master teacher at the Body and Brain Institute to understand how to connect my mind to my body, because for so long I've been emotionally numb. How I told you, I didn't talk about my circumstance. I didn't tell people what I was going through. I just wanted to succeed. So my emotions didn't matter. I was almost mute, almost, in many ways when it came to how I felt about things. I'm so grateful to have the partner I have now, because he asks
mm.
me questions. He asks me how I feel, because I never was used to even telling people that. I just went with the flow, people pleaser. And so listening to your gut is your other mind. This is your analytical mind. This is your program mind. This is your matrix mind. This is your three-dimensional mind. Your gut is your metaphysical mind, your emotional mind. This is connected to your soul, your gut. And so that's why even now it's very popular in science and medicine, gut health,
Right.
probiotics, all these things, but the gut is the real brain.
Interesting. And chakra, how is that different?
Yeah, so the chakra system, so the gut is connected to the sacral chakra and also close to the root chakra. So those are the lower chakras. And those lower chakras are connected to our feelings of security, of safety, of love, of emotional stability. All that is being corrupted and disrupted in society are connected to our root chakras. And when those are not sound, when those are imbalanced, then you see overly sexual activity or imbalanced sexual activity. You see fear driven behavior. You see violence. You see anger, because those areas of our body
Hmm,
are imbalanced. That's why you see so many women who have problems giving birth, because that ovarial region, the uterine region, is also like near our gut. It's in our sacral and our root. So many women having children have difficulty having children. Men with lots of penile issues, rectal issues. We hear that so much now because those energy centers, our chakras, are essentially energy centers that connect our spiritual being to our physical being in many ways. It grounds us spiritually in these bodies. And so there's seven main chakra regions. The lower two, which I'm talking about, the sacral and the root, are connected to our gut, are connected to our intestines. And so, when those chakras are imbalanced, you see a lot of what we experience today, medically, emotionally, in terms of instability and safety. You know, the sexual energy and all of that. It's really
My
powerful.
goodness. And we have to
Hmm.
say something. We're talking about the gut. I mean, of course, America has a big problem with obesity in their diet. I mean, just so does metaphysics involve what we take in our body as well?
Absolutely. So oftentimes our eating is connected to the endorphins that it releases in our brains. And like I said before, you know, the sacral region, the gut, those areas are connected to our ability to love, to feel emotion, to feel safe. Even though our heart is a different kind
Mm,
of love, the sacral is more connected to the physical aspect of it. And so the eating is almost like a replacement for that feeling you would get from having deep
wow.
relationships, loving relationships with oneself, loving relationships with others. Food then becomes that love affair.
Wow. So it's actually compensating, you
Mhm.
feel, for inequity for in
Yeah,
our lives and imbalances.
yeah, for a lack.
Wow.
Mhm,
Wow. That's fascinating to me. So we
mhm.
talked about metaphysics with children, with parenting. How about with your partner?
Yeah, that's the most amazing part because oftentimes people find themselves in imbalanced relationships because we are seeking, I would, for lack of better words, the wrong
Mm,
things in our
mm,
partners. We're seeking financial stability. We're seeking educational attainment. We're seeking ethnic
mm.
background. I mean, there's so many things that we solve for when we're looking for partners. BMI, height, weight. You know what I'm saying? It could go so deep. Hair length, hair color, so
Yes,
superficial.
yes.
We're focused on the physical aspects of ourselves. We focus on the physical aspects of ourselves. So when you start focusing on the meta physical aspects of individuals you partner with, then you seek true connection. Then you experience a true connection because we already know the physical is
Mm.
temporal. Even in this life, who you are physically at age 27 is not who you will be 57 years old. In your life experiences, in your job, you're going to experience so many different things. So if I'm connecting with you based on who you are physically, then the likelihood of our success down the line is pretty low because that's going to change, maybe even immediately.
But
And so when you connect with someone for who they
mm,
are, how they treat you, their values, the intangible, the metaphysical
mm,
aspects, the intangible aspects, that's all it is. It's the non-physical aspects. It doesn't even have to be the spiritual. Let's not even go there. Do you have the same values? Do you respect people in the same way? You know, do you have do you want to work together with me to create this vision like you would in a company? I talk about that a lot in my meta business. What really fails folks is not having or co-sharing a vision, which is also something I learned too that you should have with your children. If you guys want to work together for them to accomplish a goal, there needs to be a shared vision. And oftentimes people lack that because they don't know
mm.
themselves. So, like me, they could be like me. They would just please that person to keep them there, not even know that person doesn't even know how they feel.
For fear of being lonely.
So, for fear of being lonely, fear of being abandoned, fear of being judged by no one but yourself for being single, being in your 30s, being a single mom. That could have easily been a fear of mine, and it was. And you have to get over that because that is nothing else but you judging you.
Absolutely. The biggest
Mhm.
obstacle or hurdle there is that our immediate first impression is physical and it's not metaphysical. It takes a while to kind of uncover values and direction, life direction. And it could take a long time to figure that out in your partner, perhaps while you're trying to find it in yourself.
Or you could skip all that and do exactly what you told your daughter and listen to your gut.
Mm,
Because all of our analytical minds, yes, we can pro and con up and
mm,
down all day with someone's values. However, your gut is, you're going to always get an instinct of like, ooh, this person's for me, or ooh, that was a red flag. But oftentimes we ignore those signals.
My goodness. Yeah, I have a lot of friends and I would hear things from them like, "Oh, he'll change once we move in together." Or, once we have a baby, then he'll change. Please, reconsider that and and there is it hopeful thinking? Is it wishful thinking? Is it, whatever it may be, but you know,
It's
yeah, it is.
manipulation. Why would you want someone to change if you're not focusing on changing yourself? And that is essentially the relationships that we have with others and with our family members and with people around us. It's the control, what we were talking about at the beginning, the control, the manipulation of the world around you. When in reality, the only being you have control of in this dimension is yourself.
Fascinating.
If you want something in that person to change, you likely need to change that something in yourself first.
Very interesting.
And if you see that that person doesn't have the ability, then you can make a conscious decision to leave or stay.
Very good. Now, that's a partner. You could
Mhm,
certainly separate from a partner, but what happens with family where you necessarily can't
mhm.
separate? And you have to kind of live with what baggage they have and don't want to let go. How does metaphysics help there?
Well, I don't agree
Oh,
with that baseline thinking. I believe that family is just simply a genetic tie. There's no obligation to anyone in this realm.
interesting.
I believe that we have somehow been taught that based off ancient principles of family. But the families we have today, we're so mixed, we're so different, we're coming from different places and thinking. It's not as tribal as it once
Fascinating.
was, where there was an actual protection aspect of the
Hmm.
family. Right now, your family can sometimes be your worst enemies. Because you have a genetic tie to them does not warrant any duty or
Hmm.
obligation, in my view.
Yeah, that's very healthy. Now, what if it's somebody you can't separate from, like a coworker whose ideals
Yeah.
clash and bring negative energy?
Yes. Yeah, and so that requires very a strong mindset. And that's when I talk about guard your mind. And this is the one that takes the most work because and it's what I was alluding to before. When you're able to shift your mindset about that person, see what you would like to see in them, kind of, in my view, focus on the
Mm.
positive. Focus on the positive, which I know can sometimes be toxic in some circles. However, in this scenario, I've just seen it work. So that's why I recommend it. But you focus on those positive aspects, and either there will be a shift in that person's behavior or that person will leave your
Mm.
atmosphere, will leave your frequency or leave your vicinity. I don't even know how to describe it. But I've just seen it happen so many times where you focus on, I'm going to try to work with this person, and this person's office ends up getting moved
Mm.
down the hall,
Mm.
across the way. You never see that person again. Like that happened to me. I had really this a competition with this woman in my workplace, and it was kind of, I felt like kind of created about with our managers, and it was kind of felt between us, and it was really awkward and uncomfortable for me. But I tried to stay firm in who I was. I tried to show up with a smile. I would do whatever affirmations I needed to do to affirm my mind about who that person was, who I was, and we end up not even being in the same vicinity within a few months' time. However, in those days leading up, that was the work I had to do with myself because it's my response to her. That's the problem. She's not the problem. It's my reaction to her. My emotional disruption and what she triggers in me is what's the problem. So I needed to focus on that. And as soon as I got that in alignment, she disappeared. I actually never really haven't talked to her
Is that
since
right?
then, to be honest.
Yeah, so,
Hmm.
yeah, what do you do with negative energy, whether it's at the coffee shop or, inadvertently bump into people? And, like you said,
Hmm.
the way I think this is what you said is that the way they rub off on you, have discipline not let negatively affect you. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much. You have to receive
Mm.
it. You have to receive it for what it is. And interesting enough, it's like a martial art. It's like
Hmm.
Tai Chi. So Tai Chi is a martial art. It's the one of the few, if not the only martial art where the practitioner takes an open stance. Most martial arts, most martial arts are
Closed, yeah.
defending. Most of our behavior is defensive to energy, even. But what I'm offering here is an openness, a receiving of energy. So you actually receive her or him and show up in your best self when they're present. Maybe choose not to argue with them like you would once argue with them. Just listen maybe more. So I'm choosing a different way of engaging with the energy such that it almost disrupts it. And so when you send it back, you're sending back their negative energy and your positive energy. So in many ways, it shifts the energy of the whole atmosphere.
It's fascinating. Just brings up this incident. I was with my daughters last week, and we're in a parking lot, and my daughter opened up the door and bumped the car a little bit next to us. So the person came out. He happened to be in the car, and he was just full of what happened, what the f's going on, what'd you do? And I took off my sunglasses. I said, oh, let's just take a look. And do you see anything wrong? And he goes, yeah, but it could have been this. I said, sir, is everything okay? Did you get jarred at all? I just tried to, when you kind of kill them with happiness, they don't know what to do. I mean, they're just ready for a fight.
Yeah, it's almost like crazy. Like, I don't know. They kind of like,
Have a great day. If there's anything wrong, here's my information. I don't see anything, but please have a great day. We had bought donuts. Went to this donut shop. Would you like a donut? You try to just be as friendly as you can, but some people just want to
yeah.
fight. And I said, look, I'm not here for a fight. Let's just move on. So,
Sometimes that can be the case, and sometimes there's a place to fight. And I can't tell anyone when that time is, but there is certainly a time for everything. And in that moment, in front of your daughter,
right.
no, not a time. But I'm telling you, maybe she might have been there. The energy could have
That's
been
true.
different. It could have been a different
Right.
outcome. So that's something too that I'm learning on this
Mm.
path. There's a time for everything. There's a time for everything. And that's something I didn't understand in the beginning because, especially growing up in the Christianity, we're always kind of told to
Yeah.
turn the other cheek and submit and be subservient, which there is a time for that. Yet Jesus was a warrior too. He came up in the temple,
That's
busting up
right.
tables, telling the tax collectors about themselves, fighting, the devil in Revelations. So Jesus was a warrior too. And so we have to understand that there's a time for everything,
Very interesting.
for all the energies.
Yeah, you spent some time in New York, so you could see where that, my parents met in Queens. I have cousins in the Bronx, and certainly there's just a
Yeah.
different mentality there when, things get a little heated, and just
Mhm.
different things happen there. And again, handling that situation. So, how do you bring metaphysics into the corporate world?
Yes. So this is the beauty of what I'm doing, is that it's completely pioneering. And essentially, I have a 7-week accelerator curriculum that I call the Soulful Accelerator that empowers employees, senior leaders with their own awareness, self-awareness, such that they can move to and through conflicts and what I call organizational disease, with peace and
Hmm.
balance. And so it's really what I'm just kind of turning the consultants model on their head. And, you would generally find management consultants or corporate consultants coming in for months long
Right.
engagement, taking all this data, doing all these surveys. And really, what I've been told, they steal people's watches to tell them the
Hmm.
time. And what I'm doing is, I'm not trying to steal your ideas and tell you what to do. I'm empowering you with your own identity of self, such that you can innovate with your own ideas. You can collaborate better with your teams. You can be more productive in the workplace because you're not spending so much time fighting each other, bickering with each other, competing with each other for titles, because you have a strong sense of self and knowing. And that's what's created out of this 7-week accelerator program, the Soulful Accelerator, is I teach people how we are designed divinely, using the metaphysics I was talking to you about, the auric
Hmm.
field, talking about our organs, talking about some such things as the pineal gland, which is a really small organ in the inside of it's the cave in our brain, inside of our brain, that connects us to the cosmos, that gives us these bright ideas. And by meditating, we activate that organ more and more. So that's why meditation is important. So by talking through these very basic concepts, people are able to get the roots to understand why the discipline, why these practices are important. And then you will start to see not only a shift in their mindset, a shift in their behaviors, a shift in their engagement, and a shift in how the company operates. And that is truly why and how I envision metaphysics to work in corporate environments.
Fascinating. And one of your videos, you talk about the importance of your vision and mission statement and how to kind of revise that
Yes,
in a metaphysical sense. Can you elaborate?
yes, yes. So the vision and the mission starts with your values. And that's something that I spent a lot of time refining for
Mm.
myself. And I understand that we don't spend enough time thinking about for ourselves. We kind of take these baseline, golden rules: do unto others as you do unto yourself, but you don't do unto yourself well. So how are you going to do unto others well? So you really have to take into consideration, what do you truly value? So for me, I value love, but love in the Greek word since philia. There's 7 types of love in Greek, and everyone understands the romantic love. That's eros, but philia is self love. It's associated with a wholeness, with a centeredness, with a balance of self, and that's one of my first values for who I am and for who my company will be and my company is. And so this is something that guides my principles. So for my vision, my vision in many ways is to help others inspire, cultivate that love for self as well. So then you're able to set a vision and cast a vision using your own personal values. And when you set that vision, it needs to be communicated. It needs to be shared. It needs to be understood, overstood, and understood
Hmm.
by all of the employees so that you guys can work together towards that vision. Remember, like in scripture, where two or more are gathered, there I shall be. So imagine you with two people, you got divine intervention. Now I have 20,000 people. We all share the same vision. We want to create products that transform dimensions, and we all share that vision. We all share that power. This is what essentially like the communists were trying to do and the Russians were trying to do, but they were doing it in a power dominating
Hmm.
way. I want these people to be my minions versus I want these people to celebrate. I want to celebrate their diversity in helping us reach this incredibly lofty goal. And that is the power of casting a vision that can really transform the paradigm.
Fascinating. So that can really be incorporated to one's personal as well. Have a personal vision and mission.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're for me, they're both aligned.
See.
My work is my life. My life is my work. So my values are aligned with my
Very
company.
interesting. And do you have close friends or when you teach somebody metaphysics in a non-corporate sense, like to have values and to have mission and vision statements?
We do
I
inherently.
see.
We mostly do inherently. We mostly share them. We don't always
Hmm.
articulate them. However, maybe I should, and I guess I do encourage my friends a lot in this way. But by articulating your values, actually, I'm going to put this up in my house since I've just moved. I'm about to put my values up in my house. But articulating them, making them clear, the clarity breeds
Hmm.
confidence. Confidence allows better
Hmm.
communication, and better communication inspires better collaboration.
Certainly so. How wise.
So that's how it starts. That's the train.
Very interesting. I've
Mhm.
even creating this podcast, when I started bringing everything together, I made a mission and vision statement. One of the first things I did because you really you can't put the cart before the horse. If you don't have those, how else can you do anything? How else can you move forward? 'Cause if you ever
Mhm.
ask a question, well, does it align with our mission and vision? That's, I guess that's the same way. Do I have one in my life? I guess it's changing now because I'm empty nesting shortly.
Yeah. And that's okay. It can change every
Right.
day. And that's what I talk to people about too. You can change your mind. Who says that you have to be the same person today as you were an hour
Mm,
ago or you were or yesterday? We are constantly evolving beings. And some of us get our consciousness quickly. Well, some of us may take a few years, or a lifetime or multiple lifetimes. So, we have to understand and extend ourselves that grace, because we are, for some reason, feel like we need to be in a
mm.
box. We need to always stay in this box when we are like water, like how Bruce Lee says.
That's right.
Hmm.
So metaphysics, we need to step back, stop taking so much control. What else? Just humankind,
Um,
Americans, just our peers. Yes,
humankind. This is
our
all
little
me too.
community.
Um, I see that the boundaries too is a
Mm,
big one that I teach in my corporate spaces. The boundaries, which I'm learning how to execute myself, especially as it relates to family, to friends, people who have not been adding the value to my life that I believe is necessary for me to thrive. And that to me is, I believe, the place where we falter the most, is this dogmatic sense of obligation and
mm,
duty to our family and our friends and our job and these people who don't care
mm,
about us or who don't treat us as they do. When in reality, if we chose to release those energies, release those individuals, release those experiences that don't serve us, we can invite in better ones that actually do serve us, that take us to the level that we've always dreamt of being, but we're so holding on to this other vision that we can't make space for the newer, more beautiful one. And that's where I'm going through now, is this setting healthy
mm,
boundaries, saying no, not allowing, the energies that no longer serve me to take hold of me and hold me back. And I believe that's a great lesson for folks in corporate and in personal life, especially as we navigate this work from home space. Like, I'm working from home. I've been working from home now for a few years. Before, there was no home, it was just work. My work from home, until I had to really start to take care of my mom, which was about mid 2019. I started working from home in 2017 and in 2017. For 2 years, I was up at 7, 8 o'clock. I wouldn't be stop working till
wow.
2 in the morning. And that's typical for entrepreneurs and people. Like, I mean, you may take a lunch break, you may have a few meetings through the day, you go to a social event, you come back, you work more. So I was giving my energy, so much of my energy, to my venture, to other people, thinking that it was going to support, help my venture in some way, when in reality, I was just splitting my energy. I was splitting my focus, I was splitting my attention, and it was draining me. And then I didn't have what was necessary to really focus on my goal, because I'm splitting my energy so many different places, and that's what a lot of
Mm.
us do. A lot of us, especially moms, I can only imagine, have to get up in the morning, get the kids ready. You got to go to work, got to come home, got to go grocery shopping, got to do the laundry, got to take the kids to soccer, got to do this. And that splitting of energy, until that mother can get the help and support she needs, she's really going to have to wake up early and do those rituals and build that storehouse. She's really going to have to that was my path. I was waking up at 5 in the morning. My son didn't wake up before 7:30, but I had to wake up so early just to put in the work for me, go to my yoga class, or do whatever I needed to do to get my energy together so I can be a whole person for others.
Very interesting.
And so those boundaries are really, really important.
I know when I started my business back in the 90s, I was working, like you say, 14, 16-hour days. And, my daughter's born. All of a sudden, I'm 350 pounds, and I'm pre-diabetic. And
What?
yeah, I've been diagnosed with,
I think I remember that.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then, so I had this kind of come to Jesus moment. I'm not going to see my daughter, that was all I needed, So then, I ate half of what I was eating, and I rode the elliptical every day for 7 months, lost 100 pounds. I did 5 triathlons, but I because that happened, because I value my daughter so much, I kind of had this big shift and had to work on myself. Was that metaphysical? I wonder right now.
Absolutely. What was your catalyst was your child. And I knew, and for many people it is. And for me, my child was too, because that's when I started my very intentionally my metaphysical psychology classes, because I saw him, I
Mm,
saw myself, and I was like, he's not going to follow in these footsteps. I saw my parents, how they were ending up, how I was sleeping in my childhood bedroom. He was in my crib, literally my baby crib, sleeping next to me. And I'm taking care of him and my mom. And I was like, this is not going to be his path. That's exactly what you did. That was your metaphysical catalyst, is like, it's very simply a shifting of
mm.
the mind. And the mind isn't physical, it's metaphysical. So when you shift that mind and you're like, I'm going to be there for my daughter. And not only am I going to be there, I'm going to be fit. I'm going to be woke. I'm going to be conscious. That's metaphysical.
Fascinating. And by talking to somebody,
Mhm.
can you tell, are you able to discern their level of metaphysicality?
I mean, you can sense people's level of consciousness, especially in times of when they're
Mm,
angry, in times of challenge. And that's why you always they all the great sayings, the measure of a man is in times of
right.
challenge. You know, that's when you can see someone's level of consciousness.
It's fascinating.
Mhm.
My sister passed away in a car accident about 15 years ago, and my father called me and told me, and then we were at the funeral, and I'm about to give a eulogy for my sister's passing, and somebody comes up to me and says, do you realize what people are saying about Rose's passing, at the car? And I said, how dare you approach me with this? My
Mm,
grieving
mm,
parents are right there. And, I had
mm.
a watermark, and I said, I will, there's about 4 or 5 people in my life who I care what they think of me. Everybody else, I have to let that go. I cannot control that. So,
Mm.
and I made that dramatic shift then. And I believe I still hold to that. I wonder if that was a metaphysical moment.
Absolutely. We all have these catalytic, what I call um, moments of calling when we're being called.
Hmm.
Interesting enough that I just thought about Call of
Hmm.
Duty. I just feel like that's our true Call of Duty. When you hit these moments and you decide not to punch him
Hmm.
in the face and you say instead, I choose love, that is a calling, and that takes you to another level in consciousness, because all consciousness is expressing compassion in moments of
Hmm.
adversity, because that's all God love. That's all God is. That's all source is love and compassion.
Fascinating.
Love and compassion. And sometimes it can come in the form of discipline.
Hmm.
Like I said, it depends. You could have just been as right to punch him in the face, but then it would have had bad impact on your
Short-lived.
parents and
Yeah.
everybody else. So it wasn't the right thing to do in that moment. However, it was that moment for you to step on it and let him know this is inappropriate. Please find your seat. And so these are moments, I believe, that take us to different levels of consciousness, especially when you remember it, especially if it has energetic tie, meaning you feel it in your body, like something like that. When you said that, I kind of felt it in
Mm,
my gut a little bit, like in my heart, because I've lost my sister, I've lost my dad, and I've experienced all kinds of hurtful things, especially dealing with my mom's illness and trying to get her in a safe space, dealing with criticism from family who never once lifted a finger to support me in her care, has all the criticism and judgment. So I understand 100%, what that feels like, and it's nasty.
it is. It's a shift. So
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
wonder now, what you're suggesting perhaps is that we're all metaphysical. We just don't know it.
Yeah, because we're all
Mm,
mind, and the mind is the all. All God is, all source is consciousness. And if we call ourselves conscious beings, then that means we're metaphysical beings because we're mindful beings. We're mind beings. This is literally what I call a spacesuit. I call it my
Hmm.
avatar, my spacesuit. I'm just here. This is what I need to exist on this plane on Earth. Yet when this body goes, I still exist. And essentially, that's the metaphysical aspect of it, is that we still exist even beyond this body.
That's fascinating.
Mhm.
Erin Patten, what a pleasure talking with you. I enjoy this so much, and I hope the listeners do as well. It,
Yes,
it just seems to be metaphysics is just an aspect of everyday life and everything that we do.
everyday life, everyday life. Every conscious choice we make is metaphysics. However, so many of us make choices
Mm.
unconsciously. We have been programmed, like you. I mean, even even you said you watched the Cosby Show, and I feel like one of the daughters in the Cosby Show is Olivia.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
So you said that, so we unconsciously make choices and behave based on our programming. However, the more we are become aware of self, the more we decide to behave differently or not engage certain energies, that is our a raising of our consciousness and essentially the unplugging from the
Mm.
matrix. Everyone talks about the matrix. And the matrix is just being an individual. Unplugging from the matrix is just being your own individual, not being a drone, not, being like everyone else, not thinking like everyone else. That's when you're plugged into the matrix. And yeah, so that's why I love this work so much, is because I live and breathe it every day.
It must be rewarding too to see people kind of liberate, kind of get off the grid a little bit sometimes, is what you're suggesting with the Matrix, right? And just smell the
Yes.
roses.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Literally.
very, very important. And some of that mentality of, Southern Europe certainly has a lot of that, where yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, they
literally.
they yeah, they do that very, very well. And I hope we can go back there soon where all this kind of stuff clears up. And so great talking with you. So how can people get in touch with you?
Yes. So I would love for people to follow up with me. I'm on Instagram at I am Erin Patten. I have a website, really simply, erinpatten.com. And if you want to talk to me directly, you can go ahead and email me really simply at
And that's
erinpatten.com.
Erin, Erin, and Patton with two T's, Patten. And
Correct.
what a great, great pleasure talking with you today. I learned a lot. I'm more metaphysical than I thought. But there's plenty of room for
Yay!
growth for everyone, I think. And it was a wonderful conversation. I will look at things differently. That's for sure.
Yes, I hope so. And that's all we're invited to do on this path.
Thanks so much, Erin. I look forward to, if I'm in Houston, certainly a lot of great restaurants there. I love Houston. A lot of great food, a lot of small areas, and I will certainly reach out.
I appreciate
Thanks for your
it.
time.
Look forward
Have
to
a
it.
great day, Erin. I really appreciate it.
All right,
Peace. Be
peace.
will
Thank you
you.
so
Bye
much.
now. Be well.